Hi everybody, welcome again back to BBC. I'm continuing with my exploration of how to tame the jackal self-centered mind with the Dharma. Last time I spoke about how here at the Abbey we use a form of communication called NVC with the Dharma to sort of work on our relationship to each other, to our own minds, in order to cultivate compassion and wisdom within ourselves and then by extension by those that we come in contact with. And for me, I've identified the jackal as the self-centered thought. It's sort of the mouthpiece of the self-centered thought, although I'm starting to realize that the self-centered thought's even deeper than the jackal, but that's another story. The self-centered thought, which operates a lot of the time in my mind, is very self-serving. I mean, it believes that it's the center of the universe and that for it to be happy, the entire world is there to serve it. And it's there to serve and to make it happy, and if not, and it doesn't do, anybody who doesn't do what the self-centered thought in my mind wants, then it gets into having this language that's demeaning and blaming, is suspicious, is insensitive, is manipulative, and that's kind of the jackal voice underneath that's running my self-centered thought. And then what happens for me is then that talking, that story then drives my behavior that just makes things worse and in fact doesn't accomplish anything close to the happiness in which I as a sentient being are really wanting to have. In fact, it does the exact opposite. I mean, it doesn't, sometimes I get these things that happen in my life when the jackal's in charge that don't even resemble in any way, shape, or form the happiness that I'm wanting and being, the wish to be alleviated of the suffering that's happening. And so the self-centered thought / jackal is so counterproductive to that. But it's so hard to catch it and to identify it because it's very sneaky and it's very savvy in that it gets us believing that it works for our benefit when in fact it's doing the exact opposite. We think that the self-centered thought is helping us meet our needs when it gets its way, but it doesn't, because it takes absolutely no responsibility for its actions. And that it accuses everything out there of being the reason why it's not getting the happiness that it wants, and it's also the causing suffering that it's experiencing. And this is kind of it's a no-win situation, because if the self-centered mind is really expecting other people to make it happy and to help it to avoid suffering, because we can't control other people and what they think and what they feel and how they relate to us, it's kind of a no-win situation. It's never going to happen. And that to realize that, that for me, that I have to always remember that that if I get triggered and the jackal starts talking, it's not because there's something outside myself that's making that. There's a big button that I have right here, and somebody's walked by and has either unconsciously pushed it or maybe out of wanting to free themselves from their own suffering is pushing it and wanting to have that happen. So last time I said that I would try to see the world situations within the context of this jackal mind and this self-centered thought, and to try to imagine what are the feelings and needs driving a lot of these situations in Syria between the Israelis and the Hamas and the Chinese and the Tibetans and the Republicans and the Democrats, just to try to see if I could imagine what would be driving the kind of behavior that's going on. And when I read about these situations, what's been happening recently is I'm falling into this form of despair and personal distress and also outrage, which are versions of the self-centered thought and the jackal coming from my side in reaction to what I'm seeing. And so what I would like to use with these difficult situations, instead of having the jackal up, is to use them as opportunities to practice growing my compassion and wisdom. So the other day when I said that I was going to go and do this little exploration, I didn't realize what a tall order I was inviting myself to actually be able to do. I don't have the knowledge of the complexities of these situations, nor do I wish to give my opinion about what I think is going on, except within the framework of the fact that these are suffering beings, and how can I meet the situations that I'm hearing about with compassion and wisdom. So this is kind of what I've come up with so far. In all these conflicts, which involve relationships, I see a person or a group of people in positions of power making decisions that affect the lives of groups of people without their having any say in these decisions. It's, Assad, the guerrillas, Hamas, President Netanyahu, and his cabinet, the Chinese government, the US administration, acting in their own self-interest without consulting or considering the effect of these actions on millions of people. This is the self-centered jackal in full, outrageous manifestation. Absolute lack of consideration for how actions and behaviors will affect, and it's affecting hundreds of thousands of people. So now, using the Dharma, we have in our Lam room, we've got the disadvantages of self-centeredness. So what I've done is I've taken that list with its descriptions of how the self-centered thought responds to the world, and to look at it with some of the jackal thinking that may be in play. Once again, this is me using my imagination, that may be in play in the minds of those spearheading these conflicts. So by using this list, that are clues that indicate that the self-centered thought is in action. So the I that I'm going to use for some of these kind of inner dialogues or things that the folks might be saying who are causing all of this incredible suffering and chaos in the world, the I represents either an individual or a collection of people or a group of people. And what I wanted to do is I personally needed to sort of come up with what that self-centered thought might be saying so I could identify the harsh, crazy thinking of the self-centered thought. Because it has to be an incredible, convincing, powerful thought to be able to propel anyone to take people's lives, to oppress them, to terrorize them, to bomb them, to whatever. And we, in our own small way, know what that jackal voice is. We know what that self-centered thought sounds like. This is an extreme measure because it's killing millions of people. So here's the list taken from the disadvantages of self-centered thought. I've put them into quotes. If I harm you enough, you will do what I want. If not, you're dead. That's one of the things that might be going through a mind of a jackal who's doing what's going on in the world. I am so defensive and overly sensitive that one slight inaction of submission from you, even worse, retaliation from you, and I will drop a 3-ton bomb on you without hesitation or warning. You're not doing what I want. You're not submitting. You're not. In fact, you're trying to strike back and harm me. I enjoy striking terror into the hearts of those who are getting in my way of my happiness. Whether it's power, hungry need, and economic greed, or the 8 worldly concerns gone amok. That is about that jackal saying, if I make people terrified enough to punish them in order to get my way, because I'm not getting this strange need of greed, power, control being met. No matter what you do to try and please me, I will never be satisfied. I will drive you into despair, confusion, and chaos, and not care one bit. I am always trying ways to manipulate you by undermining your efforts to make this fair. I really believe that this is going to make me happy. I really believe that this is going to alleviate my suffering. And getting what I want is the only way to have peace. So to take all the disadvantages of self-centered thought, of harming others, of being overly sensitive, of being the cause for conflict in all the world, what could possibly be in the minds of that's propelling the human family to take such extreme recourses of taking each other's lives, terrorizing, oppressing, unsettling, disturbing, manipulating, imprisoning them? And the self-centered thought has got such a powerful voice that somewhere in the minds of many human beings right now, it's convincing them that they're going to get happiness and avoid suffering by doing these things. So we all have a version of this kind of thinking in our own minds. We look at that first. And right now I'm looking at my reaction to what's going on in the world and hearing the jackal language that's coming up in response to the bombings in Israel and the self-immolations and the terrorizing in Syria. I'm really trying to get in touch with the jackal who's reacting, who wants something really bad to happen to these people and is falling into despair. But what's driving this is to remember, on the surface, it's just a distraction by the self-centered thought that is really ignorant of how things exist, including the sentient beings it's trying to control. It does not see reality clearly. And underneath all this crazy talk is a need, is a truth of wanting to be happy and not suffer. And from what His Holiness says most convincingly, an innate goodness. So now what I'm going to try to do, my next step, is to try to imagine what might be the feelings and needs underneath all of this outrageous, self-centered thought that's driving the behavior and the actions in this world right now. And to see if I can put myself in their shoes and find out what is it that they need, and what would suffice to bring peace. Now, nobody's been able to do this for 50, 60 years, so I'm not about to think that I'm going to be able to do that, but I certainly want to connect right now with what's going on and connect with my own wish that the world be at peace and that there not be all of this killing and hatred. So I don't know where it's going to take me, but I'm going to use it as part of my practice for the next few days to see if I can discover what is going on underneath that, trying to use my own needs and feelings when my self-centered thought and my jackal starts screaming at me and making the whole world my enemy, is to try to find out and connect with my own feelings and needs and see if there's some relationship. I'm sure there's some similarities. So anyway, we'll see what happens.